Just because consent is insufficient to prevent harm doesn't mean we haven't evolved our thinking about sex and harm in a good way as a society. We have come a long way. After all, an older diagram encapsulating our society's approach to sex might have looked like this, in which any homosexual act, for instance, no matter how loving and consensual, was considered immoral, while a man raping his wife was considered fine. Just think about how much our society's standards have evolved, about not just what kind of sex is moral or immoral, but even what level of consent should be present. And of course, the truth is, neither of these black and white diagrams capture our lived realities. So let's move to one that comes closer. This is a much better encapsulation of our reality when it comes to sex. With every sexual act, consent can be present or not, pleasure can be created or not, and harm can be created or not. And there are variations and murkiness throughout. Let's take a moment to explore this because there is a lot here. And it will shed some light on the challenges that we've been seeing. At the top left, we have consensual acts, which are neither pleasurable nor harmful. And this is sex that is meh. It's not great, it's not bad. We've all been there. It happened. Next to that, we've got our happy place. Sex that is consensual and pleasurable, but not harmful. And this is what we're all taught to go for. And frankly, that's a great idea. Let's all try to stay in this area. At the bottom, we find another familiar area. Harmful interactions that are neither consensual nor pleasurable. And this is where the type of sexual harm that we see in movies or that we read about in newspapers occurs. Obvious violations of sovereignty and dignity. These are the situations that we're taught to avoid, and for good reason. But now things get complicated. On the right, we have acts that are pleasurable and not harmful, but also not consensual. Think of all the times you definitely didn't say yes, or where maybe you were definitely too high to consent, but it turned out great. Or the times that you might have said no if asked and may have even been a little hesitant at first, but found out that, oop, you're kind of into it. This is risky sex. Bodice ripping on the rooftop with a stranger could have gone bad, and that was part of the thrill sex. Below that are encounters that are similar. Pleasurable, not consensual, but also now harmful. And this is where we paid the price for that risky sex, where we may have experienced a lot of orgasms with that amazing lover, but it turns out that he gave us a disease or a concussion or lied to us or abandoned us. This is where we see that pleasure and harm can coexist, that we can experience both from the same interaction, and that doesn't make us broken or mean that the sex was okay or that it wasn't okay. It's just a reflection of our complicated, messy realities. And now things get really complicated. On the middle left are acts that are consensual and harmful, but not pleasurable. This is where we put all the sex we consented to, but where we were then disrespected, or sex we thought would go one way and ended up being not just so-so, but actively bad. This is the sex you had with that one-night stand where you didn't stop it even though it hurt, or the sex where, though we're used to playing rough, the energy felt abusive rather than erotic. Where we felt misattuned to, where we felt disrespected, where even if there wasn't literal coercion, it became clear that the power dynamics weren't acknowledged or understood. Maybe you were traumatized years before, and in that moment you felt scared or triggered by imagining that situation. Maybe you consented to something that you thought might help you avoid deeper harm. Maybe you just felt a huge obligation to stick with it, now that you'd agreed to it, and even though it was awful, you didn't want to hurt your partner's feelings or risk their anger or disappointment. Finally, we come to the center. Acts that are consensual, pleasurable, and harmful. And this is where things get really challenging because harm and pleasure and consent can and often do coincide. This could look like sexual assault fantasies in which we explore the allure of the dangerous and the harmful. We may find pleasure and subversive desire in experiences where we are actually harmed or where we harm others. Maybe that evening was both incredibly sexy and also gave me nightmares for months. Maybe I did agree to my first homosexual act, but my partner didn't attune to me, and although it was amazing to be penetrated for the first time, and I felt an immense wave of love for him in that moment, I also felt pressured to do more than I wanted, and developed a huge self-consciousness around my body and my turn-on that it took years for me to unravel. The main lessons I want you to take from this diagram, and I really do want you to sit with it, are these. Pleasure is not necessary for consent to be present, and consent is not necessary for pleasure. Pleasure and harm can coexist in the same act, which makes it much harder to determine good and evil sex. And consent does not prevent harm. Not all harm is a consent violation. And just focusing on consent will not keep us safe.